The Midlands local lines funnelled about 8,000 wagons into Towton every day. And here their locos left them. Then a shunter pushed them one by one to the brow of a small man-made hump, from which each wagon could then roll downhill into the yard on its own. Hump control was the network's nerve centre.
This panel, it was polished with furniture polish, wax furniture polish, and the man who operated it had a duster in his hand, and the slightest bit of dust and he'd be wiping it over. The floor was polished, and the paint was new. The windows obviously had a little bit smashed, but it was an absolute pristine building. It really was.
These glittering lights illustrated a remarkably simple system.
The trains would arrive from the collieries, and the signalman at Sandyacre, the box just at the top there, he would let the train come into one of these rows. As it came onto this section here, it would show occupied, so that was a train ready for shunting. The shunters would go out to the cabin from across there and walk up, release the locomotive. And the engine would run round to the other end of the train, and the shunter would walk up with the board and he would chalk the wagons for the destination.
Each destination had a numbered siding.
Number 8 was Derby, number 22 was Acton, number 20 was Lloyd's. There were 37, 2 fans. On the right hand side it was called the West Yard, and on the left hand side it was called the East Yard. Then when he wanted to start the shunt, he would have a switch here, shunt slow, shunt fast, and all these were various controls, and he would turn that, and then the shunting engine would start to propel the train, and the train would come up to the hump, and the wagon would run down the hump and into the sidings.
Although built in 1901, the hump was still the best way to move unpowered wagons.
In actual fact, it was very, very steep. A wagon could accelerate to 25 miles an hour between the top of the hump here and the points right at the bottom of the road.
But the hump was only as efficient as the stickmen braking the wagons. The frequent and sometimes fatal accidents led to delays. So in 1949, British Railways replaced the stickmen with hydraulic clamps on the inside of the rails. Controlled from the top of a trackside tower, these clamps slowed the wagons by squeezing the wheels that passed through them.
Well, the skill was manipulating the brakes. If the road was empty, you just give a slight brake application so that it just rubbed it, and then the wagons used to run down into the yard. If the road was completely or nearly full, you give a bit more severe application, and that slowed the wagons down so that they just trickled inside to their various roads.
Throughout the furious 50s, Towton shunted a wagon over the hump every 20 seconds.
It was frowned upon if you didn't make 1,250 wagons in a shift over this hump. The traffic was constant all the while, and you'd hear the wagons banging into the road all day. And it would be Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Didn't matter, Towton was always working. And on a New Year's Eve, all the drivers used to open the whistles, and the whole area would chime with all the different locomotive whistles.
Towton couldn't close, or London would have no coal, Stoke no clay, Mrs. Smith no nylons. Without Towton, Britain would have shut down. When British Railways was created in 1947, nationalisation was seen as industrial progress.
Yes, goods wagons, Mrs. Smith. Just a few of the 1,124,812 owned by British Railways, which, if they were all laid end to end, would stretch from Weymouth to Wadi Halfa.
Thanks to its sprawling freight network, BR offered door-to-door delivery. but it had problems. Wagons would be lost for days in the huge marshalling yards. Crews from neighbouring depots distrusted each other's traditions. Locos were clapped out. Ex-fireman Dave Goulder packed his troubles into a song.
Well, we're running late in the sorry state on 8215. She's overdue for boiler work and I can't get her to steam. But with the 1,000 tons of coal behind and the tender full of slack, me mate sent me to Coventry and he just won't answer back. Well, smoke in my eyes, soot in my hair, cinders in my shoes. I'm a-watching a needle falling away and singing the late great blues. Now across the cab the driver sits, he's staring straight ahead. He's not spoken to me for 18 months since I started at the shed. He's drawn a line across the cab for each of us to stand, since he found I'd joined the NUR while he was an as-left man. Well, smoke in my eyes, soot in my hair, cinders in my shoes. I'm a-watching a needle falling away and singing the late great blues. Now I've fired a thin and piled it in, but still she wouldn't go. Or when the water dropped, I forced to stop on the main line for a blow. I've smashed the clinker, cleaned the fire, tried every trick I know. With the rake and dart, but that old fart blames me for all our woes. Smoke in my eyes, soot in my hair, cinders in my shoes. I'm a-watching a needle falling away and singing the late great blues.
Out of the confusion of late freight came an inspiration. BR decided to modernise and standardise. It began in 1952 with a diesel shunter, the 08.
These engines would leave a depot at 6 AM Monday morning, go to faraway sidings, and they'd be there till Saturday or Sunday of the following week. I mean, a steam engine used to have to go at least every 8 hours for the fire to be cleaned, recoaled, watered, where these that you could stay out a week without any maintenance at all. When you wanted to mash your tea, as you see in the corner there's a cooker, and also you could cook your bacon and egg in the morning there, or hot meat, pies, anything like that.
The 08 looked like an electric cooker because this diesel engine didn't turn any wheels. It was a generator for the individual electric motors which turned each axle, creating enormous traction.
The speed of this locomotive is 15 miles an hour, but this engine was capable of moving 1,000 ton. So you see, it had plenty of power here.
There were plenty of brakes too. The 08 had to be compatible with every wagon owned by BR.
And this engine has got all the 3 braking systems on it. And if you include the handbrake, then that's the 4th type of brakes that's required on British Rail even today.
This is one of the 2 air brakes, and this is one of the 2 mechanical brakes. The 08 was an early triumph for diesel power. Over 1,000 were made, and many are still in use today. But when designing standard mainline locos, BR returned to the technology it knew best. Introduced in 1954, the 9F was a development of a 1930s loco. Typically the crews loved them, but then Tom Wootton has never even driven a car.
Yeah. Well, we're going now, Tom. How long is it since you've had a go? 30 years. 30 years. Well, are you going to have a go now, then? Yeah, go on, then. Come on, then. 10 mile an hour. 10 mile an hour until we get up to the bridge. All right.